A couple months ago, you may remember, this was back in 2022, the FBI busted on the door of Mar-a-Lago looking for classified documents. And then Joe Biden had some classified documents. And then Mike Pence had classified documents. And then your mom had classified. Everyone had classified documents. So there was a special investigation done in Joe Biden's handling of classified documents. And the report was just released, led by Robert Hur, H-U-R. And they were like, yeah, he definitely had classified documents. There's no question. But they concluded no criminal charges are warranted in the matter. Okay, why not? One of the main reasons they decided not, or they're suggesting not to prosecute Biden on these documents is because of his, quote, significantly limited memory. We've also considered that at trial, Mr. Biden would likely present himself to the jury, as he did during our interview of him, as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. It would be difficult to convince a jury that they should convict him, by then a former president well into his 80s, of a serious felony that requires a mental state of willfulness. He did not remember, even within several years, when his son Beau died. And this is a line that fewer people are quoting here. They're talking about this guy Zwanitzer, who was his ghostwriter of both of his books. They say, for the jurors, Mr. Biden's apparent lapses and failures in February and April 2017 will likely appear consistent with the diminished faculties and faulty memory he showed in Zwanitzer's interview recordings and in our interview of him. And then he had a press conference last night to try to get in front of this, and it went horribly for him. The great Alex Marlow, editor-in-chief of Breitbart.com, is with us right now. Alex, good morning, sir. Wow, what do you make of, first, let's start with the report.
Tend to get these types of reports that are clearly almost bitter about Joe Biden, like angry, calling him elderly, saying he's got a bad memory. I mean, people always, when they're getting questioned and have attorneys involved, they always say they don't remember things. This is very common. I don't recall.
Yeah.
There's so many classic testimonies over time. But it just seems as though in this case, there was an anger almost in it, which is kind of unbelievable. And maybe I'm channeling my inner MSNBC when I hear that, but I was semi-stunned that was how it was portrayed, that basically Biden didn't do anything illegal according to the report, but he is such of such failing mind that he is incompetent to stand trial or basically being held to account or whatever it would be because of the deteriorating state of who he is, and he's elderly and he's old and he's out of touch. And it was somewhat, there's a lot of opinion in it. There's a lot of opinion.
Yes.
I thought that was very interesting. It was not clinical. It was much more, this is my take on Joe Biden, like offering up almost medical diagnoses. It's totally bizarre, and I was unfamiliar with anything like it.
Should we be asking questions about the special counsel, Robert Hur, that he would do that? And do you think the Democrats will go out and attack this guy?
Oh, yeah. That's going to happen. That's already going to happen for sure. But I don't know. Maybe he's the greatest ever. I'm not familiar with him. Maybe everything he said is 100% accurate. And it's certainly amusing to watch all of it. But it's, I'd never seen anything like that, particularly going after a Democrat. I will say a couple of things in it that I do think are important to note is that a lot of what is highlighted are pre-presidency. So if you watch right-wing Twitter right now, everyone is just in an absolute frenzy that this is the political death blow to Joe Biden, the coup de grace. And it couldn't be further from the case. That is not what this is, because Joe Biden beat us with all of these mental characteristics. And he continued his trend over the last 50 years of being seemingly insane and yet still kicking our butts all the time. So that happened. He was already in this state when he beat us all in 2020. So don't think that the people who are at MSNBC or the people who are at the DNC and the people who run the Democrat Party, of course, Joe Biden at the top of that, are seeing any of this other than something that is an annoyance or an irritation. They don't see this as the end of the road for Joe. But I've never seen a quite such a embarrassing rebuke from the U.S. government of a Democrat in my life. And That's awesome. I mean, I do love that. That's super cool.
Do you?
But yeah, go ahead.
But do you think this marks everything you said is true there? But do you think last night marked a turn for the Democratic establishment turning on Joe, or the media now doing its job on Joe, or will we have the Super Bowl this Sunday and everyone forget about it on Monday?
Yeah, I think so. Unfortunately, I think people forget in 2 days. I said 48 hours, but it's a good point with the Super Bowl. I said privately 48 hours, so maybe it'll be 72 hours before people forget. But I think some of this stuff will come back and hurt Joe. I do think that this will contextualize for a few people just how seriously mentally impaired he is. The obvious contrast was anyone who watched the Putin interview with Tucker yesterday, where everyone acts like Putin's crazy, and he's clearly not crazy. You might not like him, and I don't like him, but he's clearly not crazy. And that's something that is, I don't know if you could watch Joe Biden's press conference yesterday and read this report and be confident he's not crazy. And so that's just a assessment that seems like any sober-minded person would have given this context. But does it make a difference politically? That's the more complicated, interesting question, and that's the one that no one has the answer to yet.
Okay, well, I started off the whole show saying, hey, there's two different conversations that are happening at the same time, and I don't know if you can fully separate them because everything's happening so fast right now, so we got to kind of bounce back and forth. So I think you have the political considerations, and I still have more questions for you about that. But then you have, this guy's commander-in-chief right now. Right? Like, so we still have 9 months of him president and Putin president and she president. So holy cow, what do we do there? So maybe we can talk about that for a second.
And Mike, not to mention that all the stuff that we're talking about, all the bad stuff Joe did in this report was pre him being president, and then of course deteriorating like all people who are 80 plus since then. So it just is really alarming overall. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, that's it. Like, what are we to do? What are we to do? What do you do with this guy? Or is it like, well, there's enough of a system around him that we can move forward for 9 months and we'll be okay? Or does China know way more than we know about his mental decline and we'll take advantage of it?
Yeah, I think China's in sort of a weak spot, I think, economically right now. And I think that the way they work strategically is they are not going to take advantage of Biden's weakness because they're not some sort of hegemonic military power at the moment, aside from in their region with their islands they're creating, and they're trying to grab some land there. But they're not trying to. They're trying to take advantage economically. Look for them to move in more in South America, which is in our hemisphere, with BRICS in particular. I think China will take advantage of us in that regard because we just can't keep our own house in order to the point where we can be very conscientious about the rest of the region. But overall, I don't really see any other nation poised to take huge advantage of Biden, aside from perhaps what's going on in the Middle East, Hamas, Iran, et cetera. They seem to be taking advantage. I'm talking about on a large scale. On a small scale, everyone takes advantage to some degree. Yeah. But what I think is most important to point out is that if you're harboring some fantasy that 25th Amendment, he's going to get kicked out, they're going to throw their election into disarray by a mass movement, try to throw him off the ballot, I think all of that's pie in the sky. I think all of this needs to be a call to arms, figuratively speaking, to conservatives, to people who support defeating Joe Biden, that we got an election coming up and it's time to get engaged for that, because that is the thing that we can control. We can't control the 25th Amendment. We can't control the way the MSNBC crowd is going to interpret the news from yesterday. All we can control is whether or not we get fired up to get to the polls in November. And that is hopefully where people's heads are at today.
There are a lot of congressmen, as featured on Breitbart.com right now, calling for the 25th Amendment. We're going to talk to Dr. Ronnie Johnson, Obama and Trump's former White House doctor, in 15 minutes, who's also calling for the 25th Amendment. So should Republicans push that for the next 9 months too?
Yeah, this is fun because I get to share the way I treat editorial Breitbart versus my own opinion, which I don't often get to make this clarification. I think in terms of the way I will highlight stories at Breitbart right now, anyone who's a serious person who is calling for 25th Amendment, who's calling for Joe to be ousted, who's trying to explain to the public that he's clearly not of sound mind and we can do better as a nation. All that stuff's going to get highlighted very high at Breitbart News. Now, on a personal level, I do think there's an element of performance art, an element of wishful thinking that goes into some of that stuff. Some of it's genuine, and I think it's totally legit. If I was in charge, I would try to initiate all those sort of proceedings. But I don't think it's going to happen. I do think it's mostly hype. But hype is real, especially in an election year. And people getting excited that they see a vulnerable guy who is the standard bearer of the opposition party, which is Joe Biden's Democrat Party. All the excitement, I think, is beneficial to the conservative movement at the moment. But do I think realistically 25th Amendment is going to happen? No, I don't think so. But I'm all for hyping it because Joe is a horrific president. It's not that he's just not of sound mind. His policies are terrible. All you need to do is go to the grocery store and you figure out how devastating the Bidenomics has been. All you can do is look at any of our history in the Middle East and in Afghanistan and with our relationships with China, all these places where we've had setbacks, the open border, which is he should be thrown out for that more than him being dumb. He should be thrown out for the open border.
Yeah.
Throw him out for that.
Yeah, that I think that needs to be top priority is no matter how much you do push or advocate for the 25th Amendment, we cannot then forget the border. Let's just do one thing. Let's just do the border. Like that also must always be a part of the conversation, lest someone still want Uncle Joe because he seems like a nice elderly man. Right? So it's all of it. You can't just focus on the 25th Amendment. That being said, let's take a minute on the 25th Amendment talk.
Sure.
President Kamala for a couple months here, or do they bypass her entirely? Let's do President Kamala. Let's say Joe fails so bad you can't even hide it anymore, Alex. We got President Kamala here.
Yeah. On Joe's worst day, he's got Kamala Harris by about 100 IQ points. So I don't. And I'm not even saying Joe's Mr. IQ guy, even though he would tell you he is. So exactly. So like it's not. That's why I'm saying the point of this all is not. It is just to get our side jacked up, which we should get jacked up because removing Joe to replacing him with Kamala is just not. It's not a net plus for the country. It's not a net negative per se, but it's not overall. I mean, other than the excitement level of removing a president for being completely idiotic, it's other than that, it doesn't accomplish all that much.
Okay, no.
But I'm all for it, just because I'm a news guy and I want to see all that stuff because it's all theater in some ways. But again, you answered your own question basically with the sort of almost hilarity it evokes just by raising the issue.
Yes, saying the words out loud together, President Kamala. So
exactly.
the other day, you really threw a wet blanket on the conversation, Alex. We were getting all hyped up about Michelle Obama running for president.
Yeah, I do that.
Mr. Wet Blanket.
One of my roles. It's one of my roles.
So I said, wow, what about Michelle Obama? That would be so exciting for the Democratic Party. They get all fired up. And we talked to a guy who told us that Michelle and Barack had a professor. They had the same professor at Harvard or something. And when Barack ran, he said, I thought it'd be Michelle who would run. Right, her political aspirations are through the roof, and this is her opportunity. And they can get rid of the Kamala problem by getting rid of one black woman, putting in another black woman. And I asked you about Michelle Obama running for president.
Yeah,
is that going to happen?
No. She doesn't like our country, so she doesn't want to be president of it. Being president is not an easy job. It's not being a Mike, you and I are both talk show hosts. I mean, there is a freedom in getting out everything we want to say, and there's a catharsis to it, and conducting discussions and speaking to interesting people and having a repartee. That is all a terrific way to spend your life. I love doing it. I know you do as well. Being president, you're constantly ticking off everyone. You're trying to be strategic. You are dealing with heinous individuals, just horrific egomaniacs, murderous dictators. and you have to take them all seriously and hear all their points and travel around the world trying to deal with people who are barbarians, basically at a civil level. Michelle Obama doesn't want anything to do with any of that, and certainly not on behalf of America, which she detests. She despises this country. It's very clear that she does. And now she's a very rich person who is very popular, and that she would give all that up for a really, really hard job of being president of the United States strikes me as incredibly far-fetched. Now, the reason why I would say it's not impossible that it could happen, as I'm sure I've said on the past, but maybe in the past here, but maybe not recently, is she could probably win. I don't know if for sure she would win. Donald Trump's a force of nature, and that's who she'd be up against this time. I think that her comments about how she wasn't proud of this country until her husband got nominated is devastating. I think that will be absolutely a cudgel she will be bludgeoned with that point, and rightfully so. All of that is going to be a huge headache for her. She's probably not going to want, and it could kill the campaign. It really could. I mean, it is. She is so unappealing. She is so unpopular with certain segments of the country, and I think that she would engender so much negativity that people are not fully grasping that. Now, do I think she could win? Of course, I think she could win. It's given so many obvious factors, of course she could win, which is unlike so many of the other pie-in-the-sky ideas of who could be parachuted in at the convention to save the Democrats. She is one who could pull it off, but it is not a guarantee, and she would really not enjoy it.
Do you have any other final thoughts on Biden before we move on to Tucker?
Yeah. Just to reiterate, have a great time. It's a great day. It was a great day yesterday. It's really fun, and we should all think of it that way. But don't act like it is not on us. It is on us to defeat Joe Biden. It is not on Joe Biden's own cabinet. It is not on the elected Republicans currently, even though it'd be great to impeach him, throw him out of office. It sounds awesome. But it's just, it is going to be on the electorate to show up in November and to beat the Democrat machine. And that's how to remove Joe Biden.
Great point. Yeah. Do not rely on the process, like whatever that even like automatically
rely
working.
On we the people. We're our only hope. We are the ones we've been waiting for.